Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Welcome to Health Oddity episode 150. Now, our guest today is Phil Maffetone. I'll get there right in the start. The last time we had him on was episode 57. So we're hitting 150 episodes. So it's amazing to have him back. I think it's a good episode to celebrate with a big guest. And it's been 3 years now just almost 3 years of the podcast. So it's great to have recurring guests who can bring not only extra kind of thoughts on previous subjects, but also introduce us to other areas they've been working on. So it's going to be an exciting conversation with Phil Maffetone today. But first of all, I'm going to say hey to our usual guests, usual host, which is, how are you doing, James? What's up?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, very good indeed. Working hard. I've been, just to follow on from the step challenge we talked about, I think it was previous week. Just continuing with the steps with members, continuing the consistency kind of theme, and really interested to talk to Phil again today, because I know we're going to be talking about a subject, like we said before recording, that we've certainly not discussed in any length whatsoever, or probably in the way we're going to talk about it today, probably never discussed it before. So no, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, you talk about consistency. I mean, that's what I'm noticing in the summer. A lot of clients just going away on holiday and getting them back into the swing of things. Not only, there's a few days before they go, and there's a few days when they come back where they're not doing anything. Before they know it, the entire month is kind of fallow and they haven't done any activity. What are you doing to keep them sharp and focused?
I think we're pretty good, I mean, I always say it sounds boring, but it sounds boring, but we've got people going away at the moment, but no, we're kind of the way we operate, everyone's kind of, most of the members have been with us for years and years, and they're kind of, a lot of them are retired or, semi-retired, so that they're used to going away on vacations and holidays, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year. Some of them seem to be away almost as much as they're here. So they very quickly kind of, we had a lady in today, 2 ladies in today who are going away tomorrow, and we kind of put a pattern in place so that their sessions are all booked for when they return. So I think that's the main thing, really, just making sure that you have you have sessions booked in for immediately when they return. And even just today, one of the members, regular listener, Paul Field, sent me a video of him doing his chin-ups in the hotel gym. He's in Portugal, actually. We were just talking about Portugal. He's in Portugal at the moment. So, yeah, it's nice when members send you photos of them doing training and things when they're away. So, nothing to moan about, nothing to report.
Nothing to report. How about you, Peter? What are you up to?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to this because it'll be interesting because, like James just said, it's something that, never really spoke about before, never really thought about it that much before, to be honest. So this will be really interesting, yeah. But I've had it. I've just set something new up actually this week, and I'm going to see how it goes. But I've called it Bath Hikes, and every 3rd Saturday of the month, I'm just going to see who wants to come, and where I live in Bath in the UK. It's a small city, and there's loads of surrounding country. It's basically in a bowl, and you walk out of it up a hill. And there's just great views, and it all links up together. But there's so many people who don't even know it's there. So I'm like, right, every 3rd Saturday of the month, let's all go out for a walk somewhere. And then, nice. They'll all get to see how it all links up and stuff like that. Because lots of people say the city's really busy, but, and it's too crowded and what have you when there's lots of tourists here and that. And I'm like, well, if you struggle with that, there's plenty of places to go otherwise as well and have a look down on it as well. So, so I'm setting that up. As in, I set it up yesterday,
okay,
or the day before, and we'll go from there and see how it goes. So it's just one of those things. We'll see how it goes, and we'll showcase Bath.
It's funny how people don't realize what's on their doorstep. I mean, I live in London, and population of 8-9 million. I go 45 minutes down the A3 down towards South Downs. Just find a spot, park the car, and I won't see anyone for an hour.
Yep.
Just wondering through trees, and I mean, there's places that are busy, but you know,
this is one of the things. So I'll talk about this quickly because obviously we want to get to talk to Phil. But during lockdown, town was empty, and the hills were busy. And then now that's all, you know how everyone was like, oh, right, everyone's been able to think about things differently, and life's going to be different. And now town's beat and the hills are empty again. So I'm like, right, let's get people out there because it's good for your mental health, it's good for your physical health. You know, all the things we talk about, getting your steps in, all of that. So I'm going to show people where they can go, and then. And then to get their steps in and stuff like that, you know, even from work, they can go on a nice countryside walk for an hour and then get back to work and stuff like that. So that's the idea anyway.
Fantastic. So, well, that brings me over to our guest, Phil Maffetone. Fantastic to have him back on the show. It's been maybe a couple of years now. So it was episode 57. We do this weekly. So we're on episode 150. Now, if you wanted to get some background on Phil, the best thing to do is to go back to episode 57 and listen to that. That's going to take you through his approach to fitness. He is one of the world's kind of leading coaches, not only in the kind of human performance in terms of endurance, but also in just general health. And he has probably over the last 20, 30 years had a strong influence in, certainly at the beginning, it seemed like a counterculture approach, but eventually it's become quite mainstream in how to train for endurance activity whilst keeping the health of the individual at the center. So that episode there, we really delve into his training philosophy. We've mentioned a lot of his proteges in the past. Even last week, we were talking about Mark Allen at his recent appearance on another podcast and talking about that training philosophy. And it's something that we've all used in some capacity ourselves. So if you want to train for a race and do it healthily and do it where your body isn't put at risk, then definitely listen to episode 57. But the reason we've got him back on, not only is he a brilliant guest, but he's just released a book called Be Sharp, which is a book that explores the relationship between movement, well-being, health, performance, and music. Now, those of you who've spent any time, maybe you've heard other podcasts with Phil on, or maybe you've read one of his books, knows he has a deep passion for music, but also that he's worked with musicians in great depth. He's worked with producer Rick Rubin. He's worked with Johnny Cash. He's worked with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's spent much time himself as a creator, as an artist, as a musician, and he has his own kind of origin story around that as well, which is as interesting as the one around his coaching business. So, Phil, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me again. It was fun last time, and I'm already having fun this time listening to you talk about me.
Well, I wanted to start with, I mean, I've downloaded the Kindle version of your book, and you've been kind enough to send me a chapter in advance as well. But I wanted to start with something that you wrote in the opening. Humanity's story is music. What do you mean by that?
Well, we are hardwired for music from before birth. We respond to music before birth, and when we're born, we are born singing, and we have music, and we respond to music from that birth date on, and music is an integral part of who we are, what we do, and we all, like all animals on earth, we all have our own songs to sing, and we all listen to everyone else's songs. And so music is a very important part of humanity. And of course, it's tied in with human performance. And that would be performance on any and every level that we can imagine, because music is always in our head. We always have music playing in our head, even if we're sitting in a room that's quiet. We have music that we hear consciously. We're always thinking about the oldies or maybe the latest album that we listen to. But we also have music in our subconscious mind, and that feeds our consciousness from time to time. And during sleep, we have music as well.
So that, I mean, this is really fascinating because let's be honest, most people think about music in terms of their well-being and health in terms of what playlist they're going to put on. They go onto Spotify, they put the headphones in. So I'm going to go for a run, right? Put it on gym hits or something like that, and so they go and run, and they're hoping that they have a vibrant and pacey playlist to keep them going when they're feeling a little bit tired, and maybe they put something that's pretty pumping on to get them going through an aerobics class. Or plenty of people on Instagram, you see them lifting heavy and they'll be putting some death metal on, or some really heavy music just to get them in the zone. What do you how are you thinking about music? Because what you just explained is a somewhat different approach to it. How does that compare to most people's approach to music, and why? What angle are you coming from?
Well, one thing that's very important is that music helps our brain function better. Therefore, a musical brain helps us work out better, helps us train more efficiently, helps us perform even competitively. But that's separate from listening to music during an exercise session or during competition. And I know it's very common everywhere you go. You're hearing music unless you go up the hill from Bath, and you're in the quiet of nature, which is a wonderful place to be. But we bring music with us in our head, like I mentioned earlier. The problem I have, and I've always recommended this from the 70s when I started this thing with sports. I've always recommended that people not listen to music during exercise, during training, during competition, because I'd rather they listen to their bodies. I'd rather you not pay attention to anything, because you've already trained, you've already learned how to lift a weight, you've learned how to do intervals on the track, you've learned how to cycle, you've learned how to swim, whatever the situation. Now we can take that knowledge and get out of our need to intentionally focus on that physical activity and go on autopilot. Autopilot is a wonderful place to be because it enables us to accomplish more. It enables our brain to learn ongoing about how to move better, more efficiently. And it keeps us safe. It helps prevent injuries and so on and so forth. So people had a hard time with that recommendation. And certainly early on, a lot of my recommendations came with a lot of odd questions like, really? But this one has lingered on, and the argument today is that, well, there's a lot of good research about music and exercise, and how music can help us exercise better. And there's no question about that, but the distortion is how we interpret that. So what music can do during exercise is it can help us overcome the pain of exercise. It can help push our bodies harder to keep going. It can help get us out the door. We may need that stimulation. So it might seem that exercise is something that is very compatible with music during training, but do we want to cover up pain? Pain is really an indication that something's wrong. Do we want to raise our heart rate during the workout? Do we want to push ourselves? Do we want to stimulate or overstimulate our sympathetic nervous system? And do we need help getting out the door? If we do, there's a bigger problem going on. Music is so valuable in preparation for a workout, and it's very valuable after the workout, which is the first phase of recovery. Recovery is where it's at. I mean, the workout is one thing, but if we don't recover, the workout is a waste of time because we're not going to benefit from it. And that's where exercise can also come in handy, and in particular, balancing the autonomic nervous system.
Well, I suppose, Phil, I was going to say, I've not read the book myself as it being new, and I will certainly read it after this, order and read it after this podcast. But it sounds to me like people use, there's this, when people are exercising, they're either kind of trying to associate and go within with the exercise, or disassociate and, like you say, distract themselves from the exercise. And I think that's probably why people tend to use music to actually distract themselves from the process that they're going through, isn't it? Where you're obviously saying that actually the music does distract you, and you want people to be more connected and more attuned to what's going on within their own body. I mean, I've never, I think from your recommendations as well, but I've never enjoyed or liked to listen to music while walking or running or cycling or doing anything like that. But I do put music on when I'm strength training in the gym. I kind of have that music in the background. But I presume, I think what you said when you say it helps you get out the door, because music very much for human beings can initiate a change of emotional state, can't it? And that's probably why, like,
For sure.
We just had the Glastonbury Festival in the UK this past weekend, and I've been amazed at the number of my members who you don't ever really hear talking about music, but because it's been on the TV all weekend, and Elton John headlined one night and Guns N' Roses headlined another night, and everyone's been kind of talking about music. And it really shows how, like you say, humans are hardwired to like music. But I suppose, what do you see as, is there a distinction between aerobic and cardiovascular training and listening to music and strength training? Do you see a difference, or do you see really whenever you're training, no music is the best way?
Right. I don't see a difference. I think no music during training, during competition is the way to go. The most important part of the body for athletes is the brain. And I don't know why people forget that, but our brain runs the show. It's what causes every muscle fiber to contract and relax appropriately. It's what monitors the body, and in monitoring the body, if we're lifting something heavy, we want our brain to analyze the body during that process, because if we're lifting in a certain way that's not exactly perfect for our needs at the moment, the brain will say, oh, wait a minute, we're going to make some minor adjustments. Okay, now we're making those minor adjustments, and now A, we can lift better, and B, we can avoid getting hurt. So the process of doing that involves, it's almost like, I mean, it really is a meditation. Exercise should be a meditation. We should go into an alpha state, a state of consciousness where we produce alpha brain waves and theta waves sometimes, where we're not focused on anything.
What are those waves? If someone's heard that term for the first time, an alpha or theta wave.
Alpha is a relaxed state of awareness where we're relaxed. Our autonomic nervous system is very balanced, and they're easy to measure. But the alpha state is a condition where we obtain a lot of health benefits. It reduces stress hormones. It balances muscles. I mean, the benefits of alpha is just astounding. It's a therapy for many practitioners, and certainly getting into alpha is something that humans have been doing for thousands of years. It's often tied with religious activities and ceremonial activities and mysticism, and it's something we should all have in the course of a day, because we keep accumulating all this stress during the day, and that's a state where beta waves from the brain sort of take charge of us. We're always running from here to there. We're talking, and we see it in athletes still who can't get into alpha because during exercise they're chatting away. even if they're by themselves. They've got this dialogue in their brain, and it's the reason why a lot of people are unable to meditate successfully, because they're in this position, they're trying to get into alpha, and all they could think about is not meditating, but what am I going to do later? Oh, I got to go to the store, or I've got a list. Where's my shopping list? We need to stop in the day and reduce that accumulative stress, because it beats us up, beats our brain and body up, to say the least.
I suppose a lot of. Oh, go on, Peter. Go on.
I was going to say, what does that do? So it's interesting, because I took the dog out for a walk early this morning because I thought I had a busy day, and then it turned out I didn't. But there was a lady out running, and she had her earbuds in her phone, and she was having a conversation with someone on her phone about work. And I actually thought, as she ran past, I thought, right, because she was kind of not stumbling around, but she wasn't really watching where she was going, and it was uneven ground, so it didn't look great. And I thought, and what productivity are you going to have at work with this person who you're talking to? And it was 8 o'clock in the morning, I think. So it's like, you probably haven't even started properly yet. And
that's a good point. It happens all the time. And there's trails right behind me where I am at the moment, and they're really beautiful. The forest is peaceful, and it's like every other day I encounter somebody who, like you did this morning, is on the phone. And sometimes they don't even have earbuds in. They're just blasting the conversations. And people who are sound sensitive like me turn and go the other way, because it's really it's a terrible thing.
But it just made me think, number one, the run you're not going to get the benefits of whatever the run's meant to do for you. And you're not going to get, and also you're not going to be, you're probably going to have that conversation or another conversation after that to get whatever the productivity you wanted at work out of that as well. So it actually creates extra, or it takes extra time in my head. Whereas if you just take them exclusively, you'd get more done.
Yeah, productivity, efficiency. I mean, her efficiency from an exercise standpoint would have been poor, and the social efficiency in terms of work relationships would not be effective or efficient either. So it makes sense. And we have our brains, human brains have the ability to shift gears, shift states of consciousness for many reasons. Whenever we need to be in the state this woman was in this morning, if it's during a business meeting, it's perfect. But if it's during a workout, it's terrible. So we want to shift our gears into an alpha state and literally meditate away the workout, because we will get more benefits from it. We'll become a better athlete. And much of this is related to driving our cars. We drive in a state of alpha, relatively mild state. We're aware of what's going on, but we are in alpha. That's how we multitask. That's how we do many things at one time, many things that we'd learned when we were younger. And in order to learn, we had to have intentional focus. We had to focus. Oh, that's the signal. Oh, there's a mirror there too. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm going to hit the brake now. Oh, I have to do the, but once we learn that, our brain shifts gears into autopilot. This default mode network, it's called, is a network of numerous brain areas that comes together like a committee and allows us to drive effectively, safely, without focusing on anything. And we don't focus on anything. That's why texting is dangerous, can be devastating when we drive, because we get out of that autopilot. And now we're shifting into this stupid phone we have, and we're isolating our brain, and we go from alpha into beta, and you can't safely drive that way. Same with working out.
I see. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, the thing is, in our last conversation, we talked about the fact that most people, when they're training and they want to get ready for a marathon, in a way, what they do is they end up embracing and really going down the path of increasing their anaerobic conditioning, when really they want to be spending more time developing their aerobic conditioning. And what you see typically with music is that they embrace the more they'll play louder music, more aggressive music, more pacey music in order to get them ramped up. So what you're saying is actually what we need to do is find something that brings you inwards, that allows you to calm down, and therefore your performance. But that's a hard thing for people. That's the hard way, isn't it? That's the difficult challenge.
It's not that difficult, but people think it is. More significant is that it's the social thing to do. That's what people do. And where does that information, where does that misinformation come from? It comes from the industry. It comes from the music industry, the entertaining industry, radio and TV. They want our attention, and they're going to create music to get your attention. And advertisers and marketers do that and have done that for centuries. We know that if we're in a store, if music is playing, the customer is going to buy something more likely than if music is not playing. So it gives us these earworms. We hear these jingles, and they get in our brain, and we can't get them out. I call that junk music. There's a lot of junk music now playing on the radio, TV, movies, and live shows too. Junk music is sort of artificial, like junk food. It's artificial. Junk music is made by the industry, and now they're using artificial intelligence to make music. And that's, that is lacking emotion. It's lacking something that is good for our brain. Like good food is good for our brain, bad food is not, and bad music is devastating. But in what we're talking about, even good music during exercise is something best avoided. And as much as I've been saying that for as many years, there's still people who just cannot get off the music merry-go-round during the workout. And for those people, my recommendation is you're going to have to wean off that problem. And so in the book, I have playlists for different parts of the workout. So I have and this helps people transition to not listening to music at all. But for that transition period, I have songs that are easy songs for the warm up, and then I have songs that are a little faster paced for either an aerobic or an anaerobic workout, and then I have songs to cool down by. We don't want to cool down with Metallica. We want to cool down with Sweet Baby James. And so that's a good way to kind of let go, because it's a form of biofeedback. You're training your brain to now listen to certain songs early on, and you're changing your physical and biochemical and mental emotional approach to the workout, and then launching yourself out of listening to music during the workout, it becomes a lot easier eventually.
Do you think? Sorry, go on, Pete.
What would be the effect then, kind of a cold turkey? As in, if someone listens to loud music or fast music or whatever when they're working out, and then they just go and stop, what effect does that have on the brain and on the actual outcome of the workout, I suppose?
Yeah, I think the positive effects are immediate. So you don't have to go. I've not seen anyone having to go through withdrawal. However, people will say, I really miss listening to music during the workout. Of course, if we're really used to that, then we're making a change, and yeah, we're missing it, or at least that's how it's interpreted. But that's part of making positive changes. That's part of letting your body, shifting our states of consciousness. We should be able to do that without too much disruption. We might miss the music. We might think we miss the music, but once people learn that this silence, this meditative aspect of working out is really wonderful. And I've heard a lot of them say to me after a while, they now get annoyed and they can't go to a gym anymore that plays loud music, or they have to wear earplugs. And they can't, like I was explaining before, they can't go on the trail because there's always somebody making noise verbally. And I've heard people playing music on their phone, loud, without earbuds, like everybody wants to hear that. It's like pulling up to a stoplight, in traffic, and there's some, box booming maniac next to us in the car who's got only bass guitar and drums going, and the whole, your car's vibrating as well as theirs. That's obviously quite annoying. And that's a lot of the exercise music, if we can call it that, the traditional industry exercise music that you hear in gyms and movies, and Rocky, Chariots of Fire. Come on, this is the heavy duty stuff. Although the older stuff like Chariots of Fire, it's the musical composition was real. Today it's fake, and it's mostly rhythmic, and we isolate the rhythmicity of a song to get into our brain, and that's that's like plucking out certain components of food, processing them to pluck out certain components of food and ignoring the rest of it. It's an imbalance.
It's interesting you said that, Phil, because I was just thinking, I don't know if it's because we're talking to you, but the way you were describing music there made me think of this ultra processed food, obviously, that we have a lot now, and they've isolated, the perfect ratios of, carbohydrates and sugars and fats and artificial flavorings and sweeteners to make you kind of addicted and make you want to consume more of it. And it sounds almost like that the music that you're discussing and you're talking about now is kind of almost created to create an addiction around it and make you want to listen to it more, even though it's not necessarily not good for you, in the same way that the kind of the ultra processed food is as well.
Exactly. It's the same kind of thing. And we have an environment, we have a lifestyle that is that we're vulnerable to that kind of stuff, because there's deception in the industry, and that deception, of course, it's all about money, and it's all about power, and we need to capture customers, we need to capture consumers, and we're going to do it through music often, and it's certainly been done through food for just as long or longer. And addiction is a good word. We get addicted to the radio music. We get addicted to the top 100 hot hits, most of which are not even written by singer-songwriters. And so, but the industry wants people coming back. Of course, I've yet to hear from someone about what were the top 5 hits last year. They don't stand the test of time. They disappear very, very quickly.
It's interesting. It kind of brings us on to another area of your book, and also another area of your past. I mean, was it Plato had the theory of form? So there's this kind of ideal version of a human, ideal version of a dog, and everyone else within that is a kind of copy of that ideal form. And I'm very much aware. I mean, I spent 10 years working with musicians in music management. I obviously sat in a room with a lot of producers, a lot of songwriters, and understanding their construction of a song. there are people like the Beatles who can't really argue. They wrote some of the best pop songs that were ever created, and the simplicity, but also the complexity, went hand in hand to create almost the archetype for what is a modern pop song. So you've worked with a lot of creators, and they know how to tap deep into people's emotion. I mean, that's part of what music is to tap into something, what it is to be human, and to extract a reaction, an emotion. And we've been talking very much about music in terms of our use, almost a utilitarian conversation. Like, how can I utilize music to get an outcome that I want? How can I get myself visualized into the right state, the alpha waves, etc. But you've actually worked with musicians, whether it's on the artist side or the production side, and you write songs yourself. What is the difference between how are you seeing artists utilize some of these principles that you're talking about, the alpha waves, the beta waves? I mean, because you work with a disparate amount of artists, some of which made quite aggressive music. Rick Rubin's known for making everything from Beastie Boys through to Johnny Cash. So what is your experience on that side of the fence?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of these great musicians and producers became great at what they did because they already got it at an early age. Many of them, that's what enabled them to make this progress. Rick, it's hard to define Rick. It's hard to define what he does. I don't even think he can do that well, although he's just come out with a really wonderful book. But it's the, and in my experience, when I woke up that day as a songwriter and I realized I had to sort of put my career, which was at a peak, aside while I ran off to LA, my thoughts were, okay, I'm gonna go to LA. I'm gonna be working with Rick now. He's gonna help me write songs, and then I would meet all these other people who are great songwriters, and they're gonna help me write great songs. And none of them did any of that. We hardly ever talked about songwriting. I did play my music for Rick as a producer. That's how he operates. If you're whether you're Metallica or System of a Down or Johnny Cash, or a quiet folk singer, he wants you to sit in front of him with an acoustic guitar and play your song, just you, not with your band, and see if the emotion is there, see if it's a great song. And if it's not a great song at that point, it'll never be a great song, no matter how much noise the band makes. And so I experienced this, I watched it. I had that exact relationship with Rick, and Rick would never say, do this, do that, change that word, change this chord. In fact, it was a little discerning. It was a little, I was perplexed when I first had the experience of something Rick has always done, which is I'd play a song and he'd say, well, that transition from the verse to the chorus, it just doesn't, there's something not right about it. And I'd say, well, what? Tell me, I'll fix it. And he'd say, I don't know. You go figure it out. And I thought, oh, he's not taking me serious because I'm a new songwriter, and what do I know about songwriting? But then I heard him do that with I think Neil Diamond the first time. And I thought, oh, that's his approach, And so it was a wonderful journey, my years in LA, because nobody told me what to do, but everybody I talked to helped me bring out what was already inside of me. And that thing inside of me was a song. There's always a song there, like a painter or a sculptor. There's always a piece of art there. And what's so therapeutic about writing music, like playing music, is that getting it out is a form of free association in psychotherapy. Tell me what you're thinking about. What's just don't think about it. Just let it come out and let's hear it. That's what songwriting is. And it's most likely something the earliest humans had, because it's a form of communication. And when you get something out verbally, someone else hears you. And as Darwin talked about, music is a way of finding your best mate, the best mate that you're gonna have children who are the healthiest. And when your best mate hears your song, your best mate could then know what your brain and body is all about, and think, well, do I want to be with a brain and body like that or not? So there's so much to this. I'm sort of going off course.
I was just going to
from
ask
your question.
I was just going to ask Phil, because obviously there's sort of songs and there's lyrics and there's writing and then there's music, which I think I can't remember if it was before we started recording or after, where it's kind of, you said that really music has been around, and if we look at things like old other African cultures and things, the drums initially maybe, and you see people dancing and people using the rhythm of like drum beats and things like that to kind of create like dance and community and movement associated with like a drum beat, or even like ancient I don't know, ancient rowing and things like that would have someone at the front of a boat beating a drum so everybody's in time and everybody's able to row and keep time. Is there something in rhythm and in drums or in music, apart from other as aside from songs, I suppose, that could have some benefit to exercise and training, or not? That's still a distraction.
Yeah, most definitely. And we are very rhythmic. We have a big area in the back, sort of at the bottom of our brain, called the cerebellum, which controls rhythm. And we didn't have much of that, if any, with our earliest ancestors. All we did was sing. We didn't have lyrics, of course. We didn't have instruments, but we vocalized just like whales do today, and all birds and even mice. We don't hear them because the frequencies are too high. But that rhythmicity is obviously a most important part of sports, and so working out is a key feature of rhythm. The problem is, if we're working out via someone else's rhythm, by a song's rhythm, we're not letting our brain work out to the rhythm we need right now, which may change in 5 minutes or an hour. And so that's a problem for many people, because they don't have rhythm anymore. They've lost their ability to be rhythmic, and that's a problem no matter what sport you're in. So in the book, this would be defined as a brain injury, and much of the book talks about brain injuries and what this full spectrum of brain injury. If we can't, well, when we don't have rhythm, our posture's thrown off, our gait is thrown off, and we're very uneconomical in whatever activities we're doing. And people can easily test this. You can download a free app on a metronome, which is usually a free app you can get, and turn it on and set it at 80 beats a minute, and just listen to the beats and walk in place. Can you physically walk in place to the beat, hitting your foot on the ground exactly when the beat hits, and then the other, and then the other, and then move forward? Can you walk easily to the beat and bring it up to 90, and then 100 and 110? Can you follow the beat with your body? Can you run to the beat?
Well,
Can you swim to the beat or bike to the beat? And many people cannot do that. I'd say 30 to 40% of the population, and I've tested this for forever, but it's a problem because people can't sync up their brain and their body, and that's a pretty. And you just look at the people around you who are running and biking, and how irregular their gaits in many cases are, and correcting it is simply working out with the metronome. You warm up, you're going to start at a slower beat, you're going to gradually increase the metronome as you get faster, and then you're going to do the opposite to cool down. It's a great therapy. It could take a few weeks to make a big difference, but it's worth the time putting into it.
So why do you think people have got like that?
I think socially we have so many inputs that are unhealthy inputs that it impairs brain function. And it's really as simple as that. And we can talk about the different bits and pieces of society that's hurting us. Noise pollution is one. Noise pollution is, I mean, if you live in London or New York City, or even where I am, I mean, I'm this, they say, is the country, but I'm a country boy. I lived at the top of a mountain for many years in a town of 63 people, and I didn't know anybody in town, and I lived out at the end of a dead-end road. To me, that's the country, and that's where I like to be. That silence is so important. So when we bombard our brain with noise, unnecessary noise that's harmful, especially loud noise, now we're hurting the brain. We literally are hurting the brain, and the result is a brain injury.
Well, I've done a lot of very loud gigs, so I don't know where where that leaves me. I mean, I do.
That'll be why you were in so much pain then, Paul, when you've had to go and sort it all out, right?
Yeah, I did a gig with a dance act, and the sound system was so loud that it damaged the bridge next to the video, next to the venue.
Wow.
So the bass.
I was going to ask a question about that's resonant frequency, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like, have you ever been to a dub concert? Like if you do any kind of reggae, I remember going into a cellar and the bass was so loud and it changed the air pressure of the room that I couldn't open the door.
Yeah.
Until the bass stopped, because the air pressure was so great. But it was a wall of like subwoofers. And that certainly made you feel something quite literally. But Phil, you mentioned in your book, it said, at the peak of this wonderful clinical career, I woke up one day with an overwhelming yearning to write songs. So you mentioned that you weren't really that interested in music in your youth, and this.
Well, I was as a consumer. In my mid-teens, music literally saved my life. It made me aware of the world, and I had not been aware of the world. I was a brain injured kid for many years, and it woke me up. And it started with the Beatles, and I wasn't sure what to make of the Beatles, other than, like I say in the book, I couldn't stop listening to them. And then I kind of started making the connections, and very quickly, it just turned me around. Not only from a brain standpoint, but I was very inactive and very clumsy, and I couldn't do anything. I never played sports. I tried to get out of gym class as much as I could. And suddenly I could, I was the fastest kid in the school. And so music helped me that way. And I was a consumer a very intense consumer of music. Of course, when you grow up in the 60s, how could you not be an intense consumer of music? It seemed like almost every day a new song was coming out by what we look back at now are super groups and incredible singers, songwriters that have stood the test of time. And I continued being a consumer right up until that morning when I woke up and I realized that I've been consuming this music. I've been consuming humanity all my life, and I've not been giving back. And this passion to create the output and not just selfishly take in was a pretty strong passion, to say the least.
It seems, Phil, that the main thing that you, not the main thing, but from my limited understanding of it, the big reason why you're against music while exercising is kind of the main reason that many people are for it. And I think it's that total juxtaposition of understanding and viewpoint of exercise, because all of the studies that come out that say, well, if you listen to music, you can work harder, you can get your heart rate up more, you can burn more calories, you can go further, you can go faster, you can push through the pain and all the rest of it. They're kind of almost sold as the benefits of listening to music while you exercise, aren't they? With your understanding and your viewpoint, you're actually, you're not disputing any of those findings, but you're saying, well, that's the very reason why you disagree with it, because it's causing you to override the body's natural impulses and natural kind of communication between the brain and the body. We're kind of overriding that with music. Is that kind of the essence?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You should be my spokesperson. Excuse me. And we could pick that whole thing apart, look at every detail and say, for example, you could burn more calories with music, but are those fat calories you're burning or sugar calories? Well, they're both, but are they mostly fat calories or are they mostly sugar calories? You want to burn mostly fat calories. And the researchers, one of those studies had some researchers, and they said that music was like a natural drug with its ergogenic effects, like an illegal drug that athletes use. That may be true. There is harmful effect, and so one could make that association, but it goes against everything that I've been doing, teaching, researching over my career, and that's a big part of it. And then not listening to your own body was my original complaint about people listening to music. And by not listening to your body, you're not going to get as good a workout. You're going to increase your risk for injury. You're not going to appreciate your body. Your body's not going to adapt to the workout as well, and other things.
So go on, Pete.
No, carry on.
No, because I've just talked. Go on.
I was going to say, based on that, was a great question, by the way, James. That was like a great observation, I think. And I've been thinking. So Paul was talking about resonant frequency earlier. So if, you could play music and it would affect the bridge, but you could play a different type of music and it wouldn't affect the bridge because it wouldn't be the same vibration. And then that's got me to thinking that the human body is just vibration. Okay, it's just a collection of vibrations, and music is just vibration. So here's the thing: we could develop an app on this, and we'll cut everyone in. We're going to make millions on this. Do you think that there would be, if you could get like a collection of music together that would resonate with your body at the same time? So when your brain and your body are saying, like, actually, I'm tired today, bring it down. And then it would actually, you know, imagine you had an app that would say, right, well, let's do that. And it would actually mimic what you were doing. I mean, this is obviously all hypothetical. This is just in my head. Is like, do you think that would help, or would that kind of, because where I'm coming from with this is kind of because people will be listening to music to say, right, go faster. And then when the body's saying don't, and they might be listening to some chill out music or something else, you know, while they're meditating or something, or stretching at the end of a session or whatever, that where their body's going like, actually, no, I want you to get up and go and do something because I'm feeling active today, you know? So it's yeah.
You're right. It's all in your head. And so an app like that would sell millions for sure, because that's our society. We have a gaming society. That app would be a game, and people love games. The fact is, we already have that app in our brain. That's what the brain does. It tells us what to do. And that's why I don't want people listening to music during a workout, because I want you to feel the body working out and how it communicates with the brain, and that back and forth effect. And you will learn and further expand your mind so that it'll work much better than that app. But the app would sell really well.
We lose that communication, don't we? I mean, we must have
we do lose it. I you know, when I would lecture to health practitioners about treating patients, I would often say, you know, it's important to ask the right questions, and don't let people tell you things that are not important. Steer them back, and you know. And then I'd say most patients wouldn't know it if their arm fell off, and until somebody said, "Hey, what happened to your arm?" Oh yeah, my arm fell off. We need the awareness of our brain and body at a very, very high level. And if we don't have that, we don't function as well. And so working out brings us an awareness about our, I mean, what better way to be aware of the body than to sense the motion of a workout? What a wonderful thing. And if we're in the middle of a forest and we're taking in all these other senses, or visual senses, the smells of the forest, the subtle sounds of the forest, the vibrations of, you know, touching the earth. What a wonderful thing, what a healthy thing to do, and what a great way to improve our fitness.
One of the things that you just said there, Phil, reminded me of. It's funny, isn't it? Like you say, the brain is a wonderful thing, and just a memory pops up from nowhere, seemingly from nowhere. But you said about a forest, but there's something really that I'm sure everybody loves. But you know, walking barefoot on a beach on the sand and hearing the waves. And I remember going on holiday once, and I took a pair of wooden Indian clubs, you know, and just standing on the beach and doing like Indian clubs with the waves, and in no artificial noise whatsoever, but just hearing the breeze as it brushes through the trees and the waves. And yeah, I think that and that's like you say, if there was music blaring out at the same time, I wouldn't have got any of that. You wouldn't have any of that sense, would you?
And if you go to some of these destinations that are heavily promoted as, you know, the optimal vacation, the hotel behind you is blaring out that music, and it's really sad. And we have lost our ability to seek out silence. And as much as music is such a wonderful thing, silence is wonderful as well. And in one of the chapters of the book, I asked the readers to think about the last time they experienced silence. And I talk about mine, which was one of my great experiences, which was the top of a 14,000 foot mountain in Colorado, where all I could hear was my body and the passing clouds. And you know, those memories are like a an oldie song. They stay with us forever.
So do you, just thinking on I think from what you said earlier and reading the synopsis of the book, is there a place for, you mentioned, I think, is there a place for music in terms of preparing for exercise and then recovering from exercise? You see that the actual, while you're training or while you're competing, there's not a place, but preparing to and then recovering from, is there a benefit to music? And if so, what do you recommend? You know, what's the kind of parameters that you think is appropriate and beneficial?
Yeah, it's very individual first, of course, and we need to look at what kind of a workout we're doing, what kind of competition is it, what do we need in preparation for the workout. It's sort of a pre-warm-up routine. We all have pre-warm-up routines, even during training, especially during racing. And a pre-warm-up routine is supposed to calm us down, relax us, because we're too uptight. And likewise, after the workout, after the competition, we need to recover. And so we need that recovery music, that relaxation music, to balance our autonomic nervous system, to, you know, get our sympathetics down and balanced with the parasympathetics. And that's the beginning of recovery. And that's vital. Which particular music you listen to is really up to you. One of the things that we know for the brain is that when we listen to music that we choose to listen to, the benefits are much greater than listening to music that someone else chooses. So that's very, very important. But it's even before the pre-warm-up part of the training or competition. It's that all along the way, we want to feed our brain with music. We want to listen to music. And if we have to have a reason for doing it, it's that we want to adapt to stress day by day with all the craziness that's going on. We want to develop our physical bodies and our mental, emotional bodies. And that's a wonderful way to get music. We want to have a brain that continually gets better. We all know that our bodies, we don't like to admit this. I do feel like I'm 30 years old quite often, but I'm not. That may surprise you, but I'm not. And we lose, we lose speed of action. We lose power and strength, and things start to go downhill. With the brain, things don't normally do that unless we allow it to happen. We should be able to have a better and better brain until the day we die.
Why is that?
And because that's how the brain is built. It can fix itself. If something happens to the brain, we can, it will fix itself. We can make new connections in the brain, those aha moments. We learn something. Oh, we've made new connections. If you're listening to this podcast and you've not heard some of this stuff before, you're making new connections in the brain you've never made in your life. That's what expanding the mind is all about. And worst case scenario is if we really damage and destroy brain cells, we could build new ones. What a deal. But we have to be healthy, and music can help guide that process.
It's funny because there's the great country guitarist who had not Parkinson's. He had when you lose your memory.
Glenn Campbell.
Glenn Campbell. There you go. But the one thing that it's a great example of God.
Those senior moments. I'm not calling you a senior. I know you're only 24, but those so-called senior moments, that image of aging is an abnormality. They want to call aging a disease. I mean, that's absurd. Ageism is alive and well all over the world, and the image of I'm out at the farmer's market looking at the grass-fed beef, and the person will come up to me and say, "Hello, sir. Do you need it?" I'm not deaf. Number one, I don't have a cane. I don't need a walker. So we have this image, and the so-called senior moments are one of them, and they're not normal. It means something is wrong, and that's something. Number one is preventable. Number two, many of them can be fixed and reversed. If we go too far into disease, it's not going to happen. But your famed English neurologist who wrote Musicophilia. I'm bad with names. It's something that happened in my early life. Sorry.
That was my excuse for forgetting Glenn Campbell.
Yes. And I quote him in the book.
We'll find out.
His documentary, I think it was, that had an image of he was in a nursing home, and there was a guy there who couldn't do anything but sit and stare into the distance and couldn't relate or even hear or communicate with somebody. He put headphones on him, and he listened to music that he was familiar with from his youth, and the guy woke up. This is something that I've done for forever, because I learned my first understanding of the clinical application of music came in my studies of traditional Chinese medicine, where they wrote about music therapy along with other, color therapy and all these other things as a holistic approach. And so, our brains really kind of leave our body behind, because they can continue to improve and be better and better, like I said, until the day we die.
I think one of the quotes from the first podcast we did, and I don't know why it came to me just the other day. I was probably listening to another podcast, and then something you said came back to me, but I may not be exactly correct, but I think the sentiment's there, where you sort of said, just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal, or something along those lines, where we come to expect that just because you're in your 60s or in your 70s or in your 80s, you're going to inevitably, have this degree of decline, and you're going to be less mobile, and you're going to be less, your coordination is going to go, your balance is going to go, your memory is going to go. And like you said, it's just because that's commonplace, it doesn't mean. I think we were talking in terms of people who perform at a high level in sport, then being more injured and broken, if you like, and damaged as they get older because they push themselves harder. And you said, well, that's not normal, that's just common because of the way that people train, I think, in terms of high level performance. But this kind of rings true as well with what we're talking about now, doesn't it? With the brain and that perceived inevitable decline.
Exactly. That's a good memory. And again, if you were my spokesman, which you now are, that would be a soundbite you could feed me. But that's exactly right. People understand these things as common. It's common for someone in their 70s to be sort of bent over and impaired physically and mentally. It's the image of a grandfather. And that's ageism. The fact is, it's way too common, and so people assume that's the way it is. And likewise, in athletes that I've worked with, and I've talked about this at times, people would say, media people would say, well, hey, so tell me, how could Mark Allen win the Ironman at age 37? And I would just look at them, and of course, this is why media people don't like talking to me, because I said that what's so unusual about that? That's something that should happen when you're 37. If that's your desire, if you've trained to do that. And I have had it happen with, when I worked with Priscilla Welch, when she won the New York City Marathon at age 42, I think. And on and on. Even working with musicians. I work with musicians the same way I work with athletes. In fact, my first book was called Everyone is an Athlete. And it went through, I think, 5 editions. And by the second edition, we had to change the title because people would look at the book and say, oh, I'm not an athlete. And so, the title was changed, but the image on both ends is an interesting social image.
This frustrates the hell out of me, because I was the person when I was younger. I was unfit, unhealthy, and I'm way fitter and healthier now in my mid to late 40s than I've ever been. And I put a post up the other day about it was a lady who I was speaking to when I was out on one of my walks, and she was retired, but her husband was ill. He had ill health. So she was retired and she could do all the things she's ever wanted to do in her retirement, but she has to do them without him because he can't come along. And we just had a bit of a chat, and she said it's very sad because now we've got all this time, but he can't do it. So I put a post up about, we talk a lot about what does it look like in 20 years, what you do today and all of that. And I was basically saying, if you think about it now, what you do today affects what happens in 20 years and all of that sort of stuff. And somebody commented on it. And this was a post that was like a minute long, a video. And somebody commented saying, yeah, but while that is all true, you never know what's around the corner. And I was just like, it didn't annoy me. It just frustrated me because I'm like, is that true? Because everything you've just said there means, and I know this in myself anyway. It's less likely that there's going to be something around the corner the more you do now. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of like you say, that's what's become, what did we say? Normal, not normal, common.
Common.
That things around the corner because people think they're going to be, so they just go, well, what's the point?
Yeah. I mean, we're all playing the statistics game in a real sense. And those are the people who say, well, I'm not going to eat well because we're all going to die anyway.
Yes, it really frustrates me. It really does.
What we do today will affect what we're like later in the day and tomorrow and forever. And so, we should just keep going. We should just insist on having a higher quality of life. And early we talked about, this thing about waking up, me waking up and having this passion to be a songwriter. And when I lecture on these things, I'm often introduced, in that way, in some way, and I kind of add to it in my introduction, and I could see certain people in the audience, and at one point, I heard somebody vocalize what they were thinking. I'm talking about waking up, and I've got this passion. Oh, I'm going to drop everything, and I'm going to follow my passion. And she said, I wish I could do that. And it was just so sad. And I wasn't independently wealthy. I wasn't retiring. I was at the peak of my career. It was a wonderful career. I had no intention of, I had all these plans and I had a lot of lectures. I had a lot of research on the calendar. I had to cancel a lot of it because now I'm a songwriter and I'm running off to LA which I should have done in the 60s maybe, but I didn't.
You mentioned actually in the book a term that I've never come across before. What is a daymare?
A daymare is a nightmare that you have during the day when you're awake. It's a bad it's a bad experience. We daymares we're sort of bordering on a mental uh, impairment. It's a frightening negative experience that quite often we've built up to in all the things we think about and learned, all the myths that we're exposed to, and just the idea that the experience James just mentioned about the guy responding to the video was sort of a daymare. It was like, really, is life that bad? So the mechanism in the brain is very similar to what happens at night.
But I suppose when you have a nightmare, you're not unconscious, but you're asleep, and it's kind of, there's nothing physical. It's all created within the brain, isn't it? And probably from experiences that have happened in the day or previously or the week before or whatever. But when you have a daymare, you're awake, you're conscious, and
You're awake and you're aware, and
Yeah.
and we're often in beta. It's that babbling, back and forth with ourself. Well, I'm not going to walk up to this woman and say hello because she'll just laugh at me. I'm not going to read this article on how to have a healthy brain because we all die. Well, I've got good insurance, to take care of me when I have to be in the hospital or nursing home. The things that people come up with, their life is a daymare. And it's really sad because, again, like most illness, injury, and disease, including infectious disease, most are preventable.
Do you think this is a modern thing? I mean, we obviously evolved in environments which were quite harsh at times, which meant we had to be able to survive. We had to hunt. We had to work. We operated in small social groups. Do you think like these daymares are a consequence of a lot of the hardship disappearing in terms of the kind of survival? Like, we've got our food, we've got housing, we've got water, and that now our bodies, I always think about, maybe it's like immersion tank. There's a lack of stimulus in other areas, so the mind becomes quite inward and starts to kind of question things.
That last point is very important indeed, and it could be associated with that. I don't, there's a lot of things that happened to the human brain only in the last 50 years. Brain injuries have exploded. And it's not just that we're recognizing autism more, or we're able to measure Alzheimer's sooner in the disease process. It's that this pathology, this dysfunction, is occurring in more and more people, and at earlier and earlier ages. And number one, we can prevent much of it, if not most of it. And number two, we can treat a lot of it. I spent a lot of my career, people know me as somebody in sports, but I worked with a lot of brain injured children in my career using biofeedback, again, treating them much like an athlete. And so I know how well the brain can recover from these injuries, just like an athletic injury. And in the last 50 years, this is profoundly, been showing up on our doorsteps. But also in the last 500 years, humans have shifted gears from being where everybody was musical. Everybody was a musician. It wasn't even a question. We're just, we all have 2 ears and a nose, and we're all musical. Everybody played music. Families sang music together. Everybody played, everybody sang. And then it gradually disintegrated into in some areas where only some people were deemed musical, which is really, you ask the average person today, are you musical? Do you sing? Oh no, and when you find out they studied piano for 8 years, and they used to sing in a band. But we have this image that that's very negative. It's kind of a daymare too. And in some circles, in classical music, for example, we not only took music from all the people, we took music from all the people, and the higher class, the wealthiest people in society kept it for themselves, and they would not teach it. They would not allow the lower class people to even come listen to a concert. And that attitude is prevalent today. That's why music seems like such a complicated thing to learn. And as I talked about in the book, I teach a 3-minute piano lesson. If you've never learned piano or don't know anything about piano, in 3 minutes you can learn all the major and minor scales and all the major and minor chords. And if you know something about music, that will either make you angry or astound you. It'll make you angry because people think, well, Jay, well, I spent years learning that. You're going to teach somebody in 3 minutes? You're crazy.
You've mentioned a few times, you could go on about this forever as well, because there's in the way the world is now, there's arguments all over the internet about who's the best and who's the worst and who's the best frontman and the worst frontman and all this. But you mentioned Metallica a few times, and people will say, oh, God, you're not very good on guitar. Lars Ulrich gets loads of crap for being a rubbish drummer and all of this. And it's like, they don't care. They know they're not the best in the world at what they do. They're not virtuosos, but they've been going for 40 years, entertaining people and selling millions of records and rocking crowds all over the place, and they're still doing it now. And I find that interesting as well. So what do you think about that? Because like you just said, people say I'm not musical. They might say they're not, but they clearly are.
Well, they clearly are, and they say they are. I met them when I was in LA, and I can tell you one thing: they're having a lot of fun playing music. They're having a lot of fun writing music, and Rick loves working with them when he does that. And that's part of the game, is having fun. And we don't do that in society. We're taught, and for me as a young kid, my parents being influenced by their parents who were influenced from the Great Depression, we're taught that we're going to go to school, we're going to get a really good job, whether we like it or not, and then we're going to stick with it until we retire. Yeah, then what? Then you die, right? And so we've got to have fun, and that's part of following your passion, because even if you're having fun now and something else comes up, how could you ignore it? So, these guys are having fun. And in the course of my career, I would get to a point where coaching and seeing people in my clinic to treat whatever kinds of problems they have stopped being as much fun. And I had to make some kind of adjustment, and I would do that. And ultimately I had to say, I'm not going to do this anymore this way. I'm going to shut down my clinic. And instead of people flying in to see me, I'm going to fly out to see only the ones that I'm having the most fun with. And I did that with musicians. When I went to LA, I want to just hang out with the people who were the most fun. What a deal.
Yeah. So you help those musicians with their health, with their mindset, and then they gave you kind of their insights into how to create songs. Is it kind of like that kind of?
They didn't give me any insights so much. I helped them with various things. I mean, everything from having so-called writer's block, to how can we maintain a tour at high energy. Well, that's what being an athlete is all about as a musician. But it was mostly that we talked about we talked about the brain. I was a brain guy, so a lot of conversations centered around talking about the brain. And of course, they know they had a brain, and they've talked, and thought about their brain a lot. But now they can converse with somebody, on a different level about how the brain works. And just by doing that, and just by seeing them in action, seeing some of them come into the studio when I was recording and how they responded to my music was just so powerful. It was so helpful to me as a songwriter. My experience, and I was in LA for 4.5 years. And my experience in there, I called it my music prison, because I was just stuck there. I was, here's a country boy going to LA. I mean, that was a frightening experience. And I didn't go anywhere. I lived with Rick and his girlfriend in the Hollywood Hills, and you couldn't go anywhere because it was a jungle. And luckily he had, treadmills and bikes and, weights, in his house, actually right in the studio that was on the first floor, one of his studios. And it was, I would sometimes spend 12, 14, 18 hours a day working on some aspect of music. I might bounce around between seeing someone who shows up at the studio, and I go down and sit in the corner and watch. And sometimes we start conversing. And sometimes I'm working on my own stuff, going into the guitar closet, which is this massive room with hundreds and hundreds of vintage guitars. And you pull one down off the rack, and you strum it, and a song comes out, because it's such an amazing experience.
Well, I think that's probably a brilliant place to end our conversation. I think everyone should really buy the book. And when is the release date of B Sharp? What was the
book has just come out.
Yeah,
it's out now in paper form, and also Kindle and ebook, and and Amazon would be the quickest place to get it. If you go to my website, maffetonemusic.com, you will be able to, if you're a member, you'll be able to read that exercise and sports chapter. And you can also read the introduction and the table of contents, which probably by now you could read some of that on the Amazon site where it says, look inside or whatever. And so it's now available, and I'm already thinking about taking a breath and already thinking about what's next. I almost have a second edition in my brain.
Yeah. Are there any areas of fitness and music or culture that you feel people haven't touched that is ripe for someone to go in there and disrupt?
What do you mean?
You've already disrupted kind of endurance.
In my sense, of disruption. It just seems whatever I get into, I disrupt. I don't really know. But like you said in the beginning, I think, or you alluded to, I have a different way of seeing things, and a different way of coaching and treating patients, and but it's really not different. It's natural. And the problem is we've deviated so much from the natural to the artificial that now natural things are weird. We look and say, boy, that was weird. What were we thinking? Well, it always comes back to that. And slower aerobic training, the world has come back to that. And weightlifting without hurting yourself. I mean, there's just music is as natural as it gets, along with movement, and so that's where we should be.
I think if you're willing to ask questions and difficult questions, you'll start opening up the world, and you'll discover new things about it. But Peter, I was just wondering if you wanted to finish on if you've got any questions to finish on, if you've got any insights.
I've got millions, but what I did want to say was, if you're talking about things going in circles, and coming back, like in training terms and all that sort of stuff. James mentioned Glastonbury, and if you're talking about having fun, and if you haven't seen this, Phil, look it up on YouTube or wherever. But Rick Astley and the Blossoms doing covers of the Smiths at Glastonbury this weekend was amazing. Honestly, an 80s pop star who's from the machine of Stock Aitken and Waterman, a band from Liverpool who I don't know anything about, doing Smiths songs, which are great anyway. Honestly, it's the best 50 minutes you'll spend watching. Well,
a lot of musicians, a lot of professional musicians do some of these extremes. I mean, when I first met John Frusciante from the Chili Peppers, one of the greatest guitarists in the world, he was on his way to pick up all of Gershwin's written music, and we're standing there in this music store, and the guy brings these two big boxes of sheet music, and as we're walking out, I said, and I knew John played the piano, he's a good piano player. I said, what are you going to do with these? He said, I'm going to learn them on the guitar. And so and we've got people like Tom Morello, great, one of the greatest guitarists. And he got into this folk music phase where he was writing great songs, and he was playing at the folk festivals, playing these social injustice songs. That's where I grew up, from the late 50s into the 60s, the people writing about society, writing about love, writing about the ills of society, from Dylan to all those people. And so you see that throughout the professional world. I was on tour with the Chili Peppers for a while in Europe, actually. We did a few tours there, and in the middle of the show, somebody would do something sort of as a solo. Flea would sometimes play the trumpet. He'd play a trumpet thing for 7 or 8 minutes. John would play a Paul Simon folk song. It was just amazing stuff. And so I'm not surprised to see that going on. A lot of it's not captured and not well known, but these musicians are great musicians across the board. They can play classical music. They can play heavy metal, even if they're folk singers.
Yeah. But he also Pete, didn't he? He did Highway to Hell, and he drummed, didn't he? Did you see that one? It's really good.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's very, very good. Yeah,
he's my favorite musician at this moment in time.
Yeah, you got anything to finish on, James?
No, just that was fascinating, and obviously, hopefully, we can maybe speak to. Well, we will speak to Phil again, because we're hopefully going to line up Phil coming back on in the near future with Dan John, aren't we? Which will be I think we said that's going to be a world first, because
it's going to be a heavyweight podcast, that one.
Yeah. How does that work if there's 5 of us on the screen?
We have to be very quiet.
Okay. No, logistically, will it be like a dice? There'll be one in the middle and then 4 on the edges.
I've no idea. We'll just send the link out, and these two, Phil and Dan, can do it together, and we'll just splice it.
I'll just say something stupid in between.
No, it's great, and obviously, it would be interesting maybe to touch on at some stage. I think you mentioned it actually, like AI and things, didn't you? Creating music and things now, and how, that's a whole nother that's another sort of Pandora's box or a whole nother avenue.
It is. It's a scary thing. And one of the themes of the book is that we can improve ourselves with music, we can improve society with music, and we can save the planet with music. And one of the things that the AI people have been warning about for years and years is that this could be human destruction. AI is a dangerous thing. And we see what it's done to music.
Yeah, they call it the singularity, don't they? But the thing is, you can get like ChatGPT to come up with workouts and things, but the one thing it misses is any kind of interpretation of the effect on the individual. I mean, the workouts, they look on the surface to be very, very, they thought out, they're functional, but they don't really have the coach's mindset. So
it's gaming, and you have nothing to monitor. It's like people, seeing a diet or seeing an exercise workout, and they get excited because whatever they're doing now isn't working. So, hey, maybe I'll try this. Yeah. And they get excited. And after a few weeks, thinking they might be better, maybe sometimes, they're on to another trendy thing.
Well, look, all it brings me to say is, Phil, thank you so much for coming back onto the podcast. Really appreciate your time. And
thank you, Paul.
It's been a great book to read. I'm looking forward to getting the full all chapters on the doorstep today when it's delivered. For those of you who are thinking about buying some books on fitness, then please do explore Phil's catalog. He's got books on everything from nutrition to endurance. He even he had a book that was a precursor to the sub 2 hour marathon Kipchoge called 1:59. So you're ahead of the curve on that. But thanks so much for coming on. We're going to talk to you again. We're going to have Dan with us as well. So it's going to be an amazing conversation. Those of you who want to check out previous conversation, it was episode 50. So please do like and subscribe. Please share this. One of the reasons we're going to get Dan and Phil together is we want to mix two great thought leaders in the industry. One comes from the strength world, one comes from endurance. If you've never heard Dan speak, or you're just coming across this podcast because of Phil, please do listen to other episodes, because we've got some great thought leaders across the spectrum of fitness, endurance, strength, mobility, nutrition. But it just leaves me to say thank you so much. Thanks, James. Thanks, Peter. And thanks again, Phil. And we'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.